Imagine looking at a drawing of a pipe, so realistic that you could swear it's real, and then you read the sentence written under it. This is not a pipe. Naturally, you pause and ask yourself, wait, then what exactly am I looking at right now? Back then, people reacted the same way. Many of them thought René Magritte was simply messing with them, but the truth is, he was revealing the very first riddle of visual deception. No matter how realistic an image looks, it is still only a drawing. It is the artist's interpretation of reality, not reality itself. So what you are looking at is not a pipe, it is a painting of a pipe. Now look at this man. Doesn't he look like someone who works at a bank? Or maybe a very disciplined government employee? But no. This quiet-looking man was actually one of the most important artists who pushed the Surrealist movement in a completely different direction. And to understand what he really did, we first need to understand what Surrealism actually was. Surrealism, in simple terms, was an attempt to escape reality. Artists in this movement tried to paint dreams, nightmares, and strange thoughts that the conscious mind usually hides. Many of them, like Salvador Dali, created extremely bizarre worlds. Clocks melt, solid objects become liquid, human bodies transform into strange creatures. Logic disappears and imagination takes over. But Magritte did something far more subtle. He didn't paint a strange world. Instead, he made the ordinary world feel strange, and that's exactly what made him a kind of quiet surrealist. He didn't try to shock you with monsters or impossible landscapes. Instead, he disturbed you using things you already recognize. The objects are normal, the scenes look calm, but something feels wrong. Magritte wasn't trying to take you to a fantasy world. He was trying to prove something much more unsettling. The world you trust, the world you believe is logical, might actually be far less logical than you think. Now, to understand why Magritte loved hiding faces in his paintings, we need to go back to a moment from his childhood. When he was only 14 years old, his mother died by suicide in a river near their home. When her body was recovered from the water, her nightgown had wrapped itself around her face, completely hiding her features. That image stayed in young Magritte's mind forever, and because of that, cloth covering a face, or an object blocking someone's identity, was never just a visual choice. It became a symbol, a way of expressing hidden pain, and the strange human instinct to hide ourselves when we feel exposed. But here's the strange part. Magritte actually hated it when critics tried to explain his paintings using that story. He felt that reducing his art to a single tragic memory completely destroyed the mystery. Because Magritte never wanted his paintings to give you one clear answer. He wanted them to open questions. Take his famous painting, The Lovers, for example. Two people are kissing, but both of their faces are completely covered with cloth. And suddenly the question becomes different. Why do we love someone we never truly understand? Why can two people be incredibly close, yet still feel separated by something invisible? For Magritte, mystery was the soul of the painting. The moment you fully explain the image, you kill it. Now, let's talk about one of his most famous paintings, The Son of Man. Do you know what the most frustrating part of that painting is? It's not the floating apple. The real frustration is this. Humans naturally ignore 90% of what they can clearly see and become obsessed with the 10% they cannot. Magritte is basically playing visual hide-and-seek with us. Your eyes desperately try to look behind the apple because you want to see the man's face. And that obsession is exactly the trap. But there is another detail many people miss. Look closely at the man's left elbow. It bends in a slightly impossible direction. Something about it feels wrong. Magritte wasn't making a mistake. He deliberately inserted tiny visual errors into the painting, small glitches that make your brain feel that something is off, even if you can't immediately explain why. So the painting becomes more than just a man in a suit. It becomes a psychological trap. The lighting is flat. The composition is calm, almost like an ID photo. Yet inside that calm image, there is a puzzle quietly breaking your brain. In the end, René Magritte wasn't just a painter. He was an architect of visual riddles. A man who looked like a quiet office worker, but managed to prove that what we see is not always the truth. Magritte showed us that every image is a carefully constructed illusion, and every hidden face is an invitation for our imagination to fill the gap. So before we close, let me ask you one last question. If you had the choice, would you remove the apple and finally see the man's real face? Or would you leave the mystery exactly as it is? Tell me in the comments. Is the truth always better, or is it the mystery that gives life its flavor?